Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Juan's World, and I have been doing some cooking. I've been doing a lot of videography and photography, which you'll see here, and I will continue my discussion of the streets of Phnom Penh on Friday, and maybe next week I'll do some cooking. My cooking this week so far has been relatively straightforward. I've been making some curries, chicken curry for the most part. And I'm kind of interested in talking about curries, particularly South Asian curries, and how when back in the 50s and 60s, certainly when my father was making curries for Sunday lunch, we used to use what was called curry powder, which is just a generic mix of stuff. And how in the 60s I got my first book on how to make different kinds of curries, like Bengali curry and Goanese curry and so forth. So that's a start. I mean, not only because there's South Asian curries, but also because there's Chinese curries and Japanese curries and Cambodian curries, Thai curries. There's green curry, red curry, lots of different curries. All right, that's for the future. For now, I want to talk about spirituality. It's a topic that's been on my mind for a very long time. And one of the things that people say sometimes, which I find difficult to parse, is they'll say, well, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. Well, let's get into that. Now, when I was a pastor, I used to hear people say things like, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. And I used to just wonder what they meant. Because as far as I'm concerned, religion is spirituality. That's the whole point. Now, a lot of people, when they say I'm not religious, they mean I don't accept the religion that I was brought up with in the United States or in Britain or wherever, which probably means some form of Christianity, like maybe they were raised in the Roman Catholic Church or some Protestant church, maybe they were evangelical, fundamentalists, or whatever, but they tend to lump together everything of that sort under the rubric of religion. Well, if you live in Asia, you kind of get a different perspective, where there's a lot of Buddhists and a lot of Hindus and a lot of Jainists and whatnot, and they don't have the same attitude towards religion as people in the Euro-American region. For a start, like here in Cambodia, there's no going to church on Sunday in the way that Christians do. I mean, there are Christians here and they go to church on Sunday, but Buddhists don't. Buddhists visit the pagoda when they need to, or when they feel the need to. And they go also for certain festivals. We've talked about that in previous videos. Chum Binh, which just passed, is a very important time to go visit pagodas. Not sure about Bonam Tuk, which is a secular festival which is coming up at the end of November, and it's a water festival and has secular and historic connotations. So people are not likely to celebrate that in the pagoda. But there are other times, that Cambodian New Year, for example, when they will go. And some people will go on a Sunday, but there's no Sunday service as such. There are things that happen. There's chanting and various gifts that people can give, and they can have conversations with monks and so forth. But it's just a different experience. And the idea of spirituality is also very different. So what do we mean by spirituality? Okay, well that's the $1 million question, and that's something that I'm going to start here and won't get very far with, I expect, and probably be disjointed. We can think of the world as being physical. That is, that there are tangible physical things in the world which we interact with. And physical science in the modern world is associated with understanding the physical parts of the world. So we can define motion and energy, and we can look at subatomic particles all the way up to galaxies. We can think about the universe as a whole. We can talk about things like the expanding universe and ask very difficult questions like, what is the universe expanding into? What is the concept of nothing? Did nothing exist before the universe existed? And if nothing existed before the universe, what did nothing look like? Well, it wouldn't look like anything because it's nothing, but what is nothing? It's a very, very hard concept, and I don't want to get into it too much right now. But some people think that the physical component of the universe is all there is. And they usually get given the title monists, from mono meaning one. Like there's one thing, physical things. And they try to reduce everything to physical things, so that when you are thinking, for example, you may feel this experience of non-physicality, but the monist will say that's a delusion, that under it are physical actions in the brain, chemical reactions, electrical reactions, neural reactions, and all of those things are happening physically, and that's what an idea ultimately boils down to. When you have an idea, it's really a physical action in the brain. So that what is sometimes called the mind-body problem, that is, there's the physical body and then there's the non-physical mind. Well, the monist is saying the mind doesn't really exist. Consciousness doesn't really exist. It's an illusion that we impose on the physical nature of what's going on in our brains and in our central nervous system in general, because not all of the things that we think or experience or feel happen in the brain itself. Sometimes they happen in the spinal column, in the peripheral nerves and so forth. That's the monist. Well, the dualist, the famous dualist is René Descartes, thought that there were two things. There's the physical, and then there's the part that is not physical, or that is outside, and the Greek word for outside is meta. So there's the physical, and then there's the metaphysical. Well, we call it metaphysical in the anglicized Greek. And Descartes' question was, how do they intersect? Because the metaphysical is not tangible, it's not It's not like something we can grasp physically, but it's there. So we have ideas, we have thoughts, we have consciousness, we have mind, which is one thing, and we have brain, which is another thing, and the mind part is not physical, and the brain part is physical, and the question is, how do they interact? And there are no answers to that are very satisfying, any more than there are answers to the question, what is an idea, or what is a thought, or what is a dream, what is a mental image? Like, where does it exist if you're a monist? The monists don't have any good answers, the dualists don't have any good answers. But they do sometimes lead to philosophical questions, and sometimes they lead to religious questions or religious solutions. That is, that the metaphysical world, according to some religious philosophies, is governed by God. Like that God is the monarch, the ruler, the emperor of the metaphysical, that God controls that side of things, and opposed to the physical universe, which is dominated by physical laws. And they're different. So, like, some people will say, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious, because they are connecting to that non-physical intuition. Like, there's something out there that I can feel, I can experience, that's not physical, and there are some people who just don't accept that. Well, I'm a weird kind of Presbyterian pastor. I did manage to get through my oral examination with my presbytery by sort of fudging a little bit. One of the examiners asked me whether I believed that Jesus was the only way to God, citing various gospel and epistle passages. You know, I am the way, the truth, and the light. Nobody comes to the Father but by me. And there's one particularly conservative evangelical asked me, do I believe that? And I said, well, yeah, okay. As long as you accept that there is no real firm definition of the voice of God. What does the voice of God sound like? What does it say? What language does it speak? Does it speak English or Hindi or Khmer or Chinese? What does it say? And maybe sometimes it speaks through Lao Tzu or Buddha or Muhammad. I don't know. I'm not, I mean, that didn't satisfy my interlocutor at all. And there was a big debate. It went on for a very long time. I was sent out from the Presbyterian, and they had to discuss whether I should be ordained or not. In the end, they did ordain me against the objections of the conservatives. And I used to preach pretty much in that vein, in what is sometimes called pantheism. Now, that's also a Greek term. Pan means all, and theism means, godly stuff. And pantheism can actually be defined in a number of different ways, but one of the ways it's defined is that pantheists, or some pantheists, kind of me, I guess, believe that the universe as a whole is God. Well, I have a tendency to think of the collective consciousness of the universe as being God, but that's sort of weasel words, I guess. I mean, the point is, I'm saying that there is something metaphysical that we interact with that is not physical. And so that's my whole point. When I was a pastor, my goal was to reflect on and to challenge people's ideas of the metaphysical. So that the spiritual was my topic every Sunday. So when you say that you're spiritual but not religious, then that means you've never come to my church, because Presbyterianism is a form of religion, and I was preaching in a Presbyterian church. So I was being religious and I was being spiritual. I think that what a lot of people don't like about what they call religion is organized religion. And the problem there often comes down to the things that people within the organized church are actually preaching, and it's normally morality. Like that going to church is about being a good person. Going to church is about doing good works. Well, there's a big debate that's gone on for centuries about that within the Christian tradition. And I'm not going to get into all of that right now, but what I am going to say is that morality is secondary within Christianity to spirituality. Spirituality comes first. That being a spiritual person is what matters. And that what comes out of your spirituality should be a certain moral stance. And that's exactly what St. Paul wrote in his letters, that you're a Christian first, and that because you follow Christian precepts, you are impelled towards acting in loving ways. That you can't help it, because being a Christian means being a loving person, and that you love everybody, and that you love the earth, and that you love the universe. That in fact, that you can almost hear sort of echoes of Buddhism, that if you embrace everything, then you become part of it. You're not separated from it. You're not thinking of yourself as being like an individual distinct from the rest of humanity and the rest of the world, that is me versus everything else. That I am part of everything, and the universe is part of me. Well, one of the ways you can think about that is that you've got a lot of heavy elements in your body, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and so forth. Where were those atoms made? They were made in exploding stars. They were made in supernova, billions of years ago. You are stardust. I mean, some parts of you, well, pretty much all parts of you were parts of stars at one point. Even hydrogen, the hydrogen in the water in your body was once in stars. So you are stardust. You are golden. But we don't think about that. We have a tendency to seal ourselves off as individuals and to not be spiritual, to not be metaphysical, but to think in physical terms, to think in materialistic terms. And that's a debate that is also still current within the social sciences, where I do my research. What drives human culture forward? Is it the material, or is it the spiritual? Or we would sometimes call it the ideational. Like, what makes things happen in culture? Is it changes in the material world, or is it changes in ideas? Well, I happen to think that it's both, of course, that they interact with each other. How do they interact? Simple answer, I don't know. But I want to make sure that we preserve the idea of spirituality, of something metaphysical, something beyond the physical. Because otherwise the world is really dull. If it's just physical, if it's just material, then it's not very interesting. Like when you look at a painting, when you're attracted to a painting, are you attracted to its physical qualities, or is there something more there? There's something different. When you go into a pagoda or a church or a cathedral and you are awe-struck, and let's use the word awe in a way that we normally don't use it. We tend to use words like awesome. Oh, that's awesome. No, but if a cathedral is awesome, what is it doing to you? Not just physically, but what is it doing to you emotionally? What is it doing to you? What is it creating in you as an experience? That's what I'm interested in, both as an academic and as a pastor. And I'll continue this topic at some point, because it touches on the roads of Phnom Penh, pagodas, and all the rest of it that I'm doing videos about now. But meanwhile, tell your friends about my videos. Please like, please subscribe, and I'll be back on Friday, probably with a video having to do with weddings and funerals in Phnom Penh. Have a good week.